Welcome back, everyone. My name's Constantine. We're doing another one of the MGLA recap videos here, and my guest today is going to be David Thomas.
Hey, Dave. How's it going?
Yeah. So, for sort of the topic of today, for this one, we're going to be talking about your experiences vending at nationals, working with the community, mainly Rochester, when you were vending there, and then some of the future plans for the team. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Nice. So yeah, just kind of jumping into it with, vending at Nats. I guess just like, do you want to start with how you got this? Sort of like the background?
Yeah, I can definitely talk towards that. So that really starts with how I learned the game. I first picked up the game when I lived in Rochester back in 2018, and Sean O'Brien was the one demoing it in the convention hall. He showed me how to play. And so I learned the game through Rochester, and even after moving to Massachusetts, I've kept up a relationship with Sean and some of the other people who are currently in Rochester.
Mhm.
So because of that, I have had the opportunity to vend for Sean in a couple of places even before this. The first one being the first MHA Pro Hero Nationals we did in 2022, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then also the first HLC. I was also helping him vend while we were in Vegas, I believe, for that one. So I've had a couple opportunities to work with him on things, and so this time Sean also asked me to help out, do in a similar role that I've done before. So I accepted, and that's how I ended up being able to come to Nats this time, actually.
Nice. And so, so you have this sort of, long history with Sean. And so I guess kind of getting to like day one of nationals. So, because I guess there's some setup too, right? Like, did you guys have to do stuff on Thursday?
Oh, so not exactly. So ideally, we would like to do some setup on Thursday, get things ready, but just with how some of the logistics played out, especially when I got in, we didn't actually do setup ourselves. I think Sean and a couple of the other Rochester crew actually got like the tables, some of the displays set up as well. But I certainly didn't help by getting in around midnight local and then not going to bed till 3 a.m. because I'm just catching up with people talking. So it made my 6 a.m. get up time a little bit more rough than I initially anticipated it to be.
Yeah.
Day one, I was running on 3 hours of sleep, and it was really funny because I told someone very specifically the night before, I really need about 6 to 8 hours to operate at full. So apparently they were worried for me the entire first day after they knew I was on 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah. I mean, I get going at an event just wanting to use every single hour in the day that you possibly can to just like hang out, play, talk to people. I mean, I'm sure that was rough, right, on Friday for operating on that.
Funny enough, no. I think actually I was just going on full adrenaline the entire time. That kind of fatigue actually didn't even really kick in until like partway through Saturday. Pretty like you were saying, just being able to see everyone, talk with everyone, help my friend out, make sales essentially by taking in their product, because for full disclosure, my primary role was helping run the buy list for Rochester. I did have some side roles helping people pick up orders as well, but the main thing was I was going to take your cards in for either store credit, cash, maybe a check if necessary, and help you buy it, fund the next thing you want to get. So that's what I did a lot of. And I learned quite a bit on how I had to improve my system. There were a lot of people wanting to sell their cards.
So diving into the last part. So like, what was your initial idea going into the weekend as like what your system would be? And then, we'll get to like how you changed it.
Yes. I pretty much every day I ended up changing it. So the first thing was the approach I took from the first U.S. Nationals, because I thought it was going to be similar volume. and I would put people. I would say, you like if you were interested in selling your cards, I would say either if it's a small pile, I can quickly look at it,
Mhm.
or if you're comfortable, I'll hold on to your stuff. Right, I'll have like a little sticky note. You give me your contact info, and I'll put it essentially in a queue, and we get to it when we have a moment.
Mhm.
So that was initially the plan and what I was working on for a little bit. So it worked pretty well at prior nationals in 2022. I would just go through. I had a spreadsheet I could reference, scroll through, and then based on those numbers, come up with something, and we work out a deal from there.
Mhm.
That did not work for this one because, as I learned, this was some of the highest throughput volume that Sean has actually dealt with at an event like this before.
Nice.
It was, yeah, it was just a lot of people really excited to both buy new product and be able to turn over some of the cards they could, especially with some very high value pickups coming in. Right, we had people
Mhm.
selling Walk the Dogs. We had people selling what else were some big
Determined
ones? We had a
advance, maybe?
couple. We had a couple determined advanced, yeah. Like there were some big ones that were coming through for we were taking in for at least like oh I forget how much credit we were doing essentially, but people were turning some of these piles into like 3-4 new booster boxes of cards essentially.
Nice.
Uh, but the problem that ended up happening is because of that volume,
Mhm.
I by 10 a.m. had stacked a queue of 7 to 8 either binders, boxes, and others long, and it wasn't getting shorter because we were filling orders, we were shipping or getting people their orders.
Mhm.
Uh, and so it became very clear the system was not going to be sustainable for the volume that we had at this point.
Yeah, and this was Friday 10 a.m. where you had like already this
Yes.
huge
Yes.
backlog of
Yeah, we officially opened around 8, and by 10 a.m., maybe 11, I was already just like shoving people's stuff. It was kind of covering the ground because thankfully no one else had to go behind me, so I started making this space to my right. But when you looked over, it's just like 5 or 6 boxes, binders, and things just hanging out there, and it was starting to become a mess.
Mhm.
So we had to revise the system going into the second day. And that one essentially was try to estimate a little bit more. I was being given advice by another person helping Rochester, Aaron Lindo, and his suggestion was, well, you play the game, right, David? You should know what's pretty good, what's hot, what's not.
Mhm.
You've seen a bunch of the cards come through. Use your judgment on what we do want, and can make that estimate. So what I started to do was I started to look at cards and say to people, well, uh, here are the ones we know we like. Here are the ones that maybe aren't going to be as useful for us, and I'll start making snap judgments essentially. Or, as Sean was directing people, we have an online buy list, which if they want to input every 75-cent card on Sean's buy list, like they can, or I may like
Yeah.
cutting it, or what's the right term, like essentially just giving them less than what it might be valued at, just because I don't have that time.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
that's what I started to do. Then we ran into another problem actually by about noon to 1 p.m. And that's the issue that something we weren't doing back at the other nationals. We were also now taking the cards we were getting and immediately loading them back into inventory, right? Because if we're getting 4 Walk the Dogs,
Yeah. You want
we're
to
gonna
sell
put
those?
we should you want to sell them, and people were buying them at like $60, right?
Oh
And they would
wow.
just fly out the door.
Mhm.
Like people would just right there and then just bang, pick it up. I even know some cards that within 30 minutes were just immediately out. I think we had like a Chimera Kraken XR that I brought in, and by the time I looked again in inventory, it was gone. Just
Yeah.
fully just right out the door.
And was this
Uh,
this still Friday or Saturday?
Uh, this was Saturday.
Mhm.
This was Saturday where we've updated the system to try and get some estimates, but we want to pull in the cards because cards can sell, right? We
Yeah.
have inventory space and we can do that.
Mhm.
But I ran into a problem is I had to, for every card we pulled in, put it into a digital inventory, update that,
Mhm.
and then make sure they get into our inventory pieces, because if they're just sitting in front of me, it's not as easy, say, for people pulling orders or people asking, like, do we have cards in stock, to easily see that.
Mm-hmm.
So what I started to notice was I was now piling up cards faster than I could put them away. And when we closed up at 7 p.m. that day, I had like 300 cards in front of me.
Just like not listed
And
yet?
yeah, they weren't even on the shop. And like sometimes I'd like pull like high value cards, right, and try and get them out. But I had like some AOT to ultra rares that in my head I maybe didn't value as high. That turns out they were like $7, $8, but I just didn't have the time. Like I was just pulling things and trying to get them through. So then we revised the system again. Because I talked with Sean, and it's like, okay, well, what do we want to do? Well, we want to value the customer experience. We want them to know that they can get things and that quickly. We know where they are quickly. And so when pulling buy lists at that point, it was find the cards that we need. Either we just don't have stock on it, or it's just a valuable card, and focus on those. And if I make some mistakes because I didn't pick up something, that's okay. Like that is what we started to look at a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so that ended up being how I could balance everything, because by the end of the weekend, we still had some things that went into a box for needs to be sorted or isn't in inventory. But that box could have been 5 times larger if we didn't shift that system so that I could start inventorying things and get them in.
Yeah. Like I have to imagine like my go-tos of like high-end chaos cards were probably ones that were like flying through. Maybe even some of the like Fire and Life Attune cards from AOT, like Midst of Despair. I don't know if anyone was playing Attack Titan's Haymaker, but I think that one's pricey.
It sure was. So effectively what we did between kind of like the point of sale and myself is I essentially took into Attack Titan's Haymakers and gave someone 2 Dark Deku decks and like a couple other singles, and then we just did an equal exchange. They rang it up and we just took those 2 cards because they were just worth that to us.
Yeah, and just save some time on the inventory movement, right?
Yeah. And actually, speaking of that, another we can talk about it a little bit later, but also a little interesting note we found that I didn't know was how some inventory systems, just kind of keeping ambiguous, don't essentially hold items for online orders until you like get them to a certain point, and that also some things can be claimed for online orders that may be, say, in a display case. And so if you're not keeping up with all of the online orders, you may accidentally double sell if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So with the high volume we were seeing of in-person foot traffic, there are a couple points when we had to try to figure, okay, well, these cards are missing from an order. How do we figure out what we need to do? Because like maybe we need to, like sometimes we actually had a running list of like, we need to pick up this card because this isn't an order either for in-person or USPS, and we had to get that moving. And so sometimes I just pick up like a $2 card because someone wanted it, and we need to make sure we cover those orders as well as we can.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had at Atlanta, I basically experienced that firsthand with Rochester in that like I wanted to get some canister creation strikes. They had some in the display case, but it was marked for some online order, right? So it's in front of me.
Yeah.
No, you cannot get those ones.
Yeah. We even had a case where with one really high value card, we had like 2 online orders, both put it into their order and have that covered. And so we had to figure out something there because we needed to find that additional card.
Yeah. Definitely a struggle with the in-person events with that much foot traffic. I mean, we've kind of touched on it a bit already, but sort of like for the future, do you have like key takeaways that you're going to be doing this? Do you have key takeaways from this weekend for buying and selling cards thanks to this experience?
So key takeaways from So I think the biggest one is. Oh, sorry, you were saying?
No. I didn't know if you needed me to like reiterate what I said, like re-explain it rather.
Or I assume like biggest takeaways from like the are on buying and selling,
Yes. Yeah.
right? From vending over the weekend.
Yep.
Yeah. So the biggest ones, I would say, or like make sure you have a system that allows you to very quickly find and access cards like that. Um, so one thing we found is knowing like where we had things set up physically in a way that allowed us to almost progress chronologically. And so we made sure, for example, the obvious, like all the challenger deck stuff in one area, MHA stuff progressing, and then you hit the one UU and then AOT2, right? So it's like very clear, like this is where you go for that speeds it up significantly. If you don't have that, you spend so much time bouncing back and forth, which we ended up happening for the retro stuff because we just didn't have the space. So we had to kind of shift boxes up and like, because we had like 3 stack boxes 4 wide. Sometimes we'd have to just play Tetris, just shifting things around to pull orders and figure out where things have gone.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, I'd say is, yeah, especially if you're vending in person. I mean, anecdotal, most people who are doing stuff in person, they probably already know this, but make sure to stock all of your commons and uncommons, especially a lot of the staples. You'll be shocked just how quickly you can run out of them. We ran out of requesting assistance. We ran out of struggling with studies because some people needed requestings for MHA Spotlight and struggling with studies. I mean, like it's one of the premier common uncommon cards from Crimson Rampage. And also, yeah, we realize that people will just spend $1 for a playset of a common because they just need it. That's some of like the main buying, or on the selling side, sorry. On the buying side, it's realizing that reputation and trust with a potential person selling you their cards very much can affect the offers that they're willing to take. Is that understandably, if they're a long time customer, they're probably fine with whatever rates you end up going with, depending on the market. But understandably, if they're someone who hasn't worked with you a lot, or maybe are, say, used to other markets, maybe they're not going to be amenable towards what you're doing because they're always looking for a better deal, which makes sense, right? You want something that makes sense for you. So I'd say those are the main things, but I really think working with Sean, he was on the other side doing TO stuff, but being able to work with him in terms of how he wanted it run, and also just having the opportunity to help him out again, is something I very much appreciate. I always love being able to come out and help out Rochester when it makes sense for me, like financially.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I really had that opportunity to kind of keep up those relationships.
Yeah, and like just an aside on that, one of the last sort of learning points, like yes, it's with people that are maybe new to buying and selling in cards. You might see people talking about like, oh, this card is $60, but like you can't realistically always expect to get that exact value in selling it. And then, like if you're going to Rochester for the first time, they'll give you money for your cards, but you have to, understand like how much they're willing to pay versus maybe someone that's, they need a card right now. It's round 1. They need it in their deck, or they're potentially going to get a game loss for it, right? Like different priorities for different people, right?
Yes. And then also just on top of that, it's realizing that you really baked into the cost for things, right? If something's $60, that's $60 where you're spending the time having to say listed on TCG Player or Facebook Marketplace. You have to take the risk on, maybe is this buyer actually going to take it from you at that price, or like are they going to charge back, things like that. Or you can go to a place where you trust it, they are picking them up at like a certain value, and you can even get higher value than maybe like that 0.5% by going store credit, and just picking, kind of still supporting them essentially. So there are a little bit more factors, and not everyone has the time to essentially set up an online marketplace of their own. It sometimes could just be so much easier just to say, I'm going to take these like 50 cards and I'm going to hand it to someone who will just give me stuff right on the spot.
Yep. Yeah. And I guess kind of like, yeah, we're touching on multiple things from that of like, you mentioned working with Sean and how grateful you were for it. I kind of want to segue this to the sort of community overlap we get with these events
Yes.
where, yeah, if you want to talk more about your experience with Rochester and some of the other teams that or communities that are,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
good.
Yep. I think that one of the greatest things that has really come up more and more is all of these different teams and organizations that are really cropping up over these last few years. Like back during the UFS time, you definitely had like Rochester CCG, you had Unfun Stuff, right? You had Final Round Game Shop, and so oh no, there's probably gonna be like one team, I can feel it right now. They're like, why didn't you call us out? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm somewhat insulated, but the idea of we now have all these other groups that are coming out. There are so many that honestly I'm a little worried to actually name, like try and cover that. But outside of Rochester, which I can definitely talk more about as well, I do also want to give a shout out to Team Couple. I and a couple other people on the team have had good chances to the opportunity to either interact or practice with some of them. Like Josh Atkins, who placed in made top cuts this past event. He's someone who I had the chance to play against in Atlanta, even played against in one of the like webcam events, and we just ended up chatting so much. And there is so much that can be done trying to bridge the gap between these different groups, because we have our organizations in terms of like kind of short term or like timeline wise, trying to figure out easily like who can we interact with, who can we say practice with, who do we want to interact with on a day-to-day basis. But there are so many other people that you get to interact with at these events that you realize like, wow, I want to like spend more time interacting with them in different ways. So like I said, one for me is after the whole event, I actually got some drinks with some of the Team Couple guys.
Nice.
And it was really fun realizing that I'd actually gotten to meet some of them either through interacting with the buy list or other things, and just getting to know some of them even more. And so I don't want that just to stay as you meet them in person and then maybe you talk a little bit online. I think there is real expansion that is already being done that we can push further as a community of having these either inter-team events or better yet, other events that the teams hold for trying to help celebrate the community, trying to essentially take what they've done and give back appropriately, because I agree that is something that once you get to a certain size and have the capacity really should be doing, because like what else are you doing with all of this, rather than it's like not trying to keep things insular in terms of your success. It is trying to share that back out in whatever way makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And so, me and Justin, and also me and Danny in those videos, we're pretty focused on the insular community building of like, you have this, we have MGLA as a team where it is a ton of fun to both chat with and hang out online, but also meet in person at these events and have your group of friends to hang out with. But as you're saying, kind of giving back to the community, I think this would be a potential good segue to. Do you want to call it like an announcement as a sort of like future plans?
I don't know if I want to call it I don't know if I want to call it announcement, because we've definitely had some like false launches in the past. Monarch Money Madness. So I don't want to put anything out there just yet, but I know there were some conversations happening in Dallas that made me kind of evaluate where we as the MGULA are in terms of both the kind of community perception and also like in terms of how people see us as a competitive group, but also just as much as a community outreach group as well. And so what I'll say so far, specifically thinking of the Monarch Money Madness, I forget what it was called. I want to look into seeing if we can also help run monthly events. I know the webcam circuit that's been done over the last season has been quite a success. I know some people have been very excited for that. But of course, not everything has to be for crazy stakes. Some people really just want a place to be able to do something.
Mhm.
And for example, Wednesday may not work for everyone. So I know I'm talking with some people on the team, maybe people outside of the team as well, to see if we might be able to have the infrastructure and backing that would allow us to do something like that at a monthly level.
Mhm.
I think it is possible, and it's something that I personally am more invested in being. No, I won't call it washed up has been, but busy with other things.
I think you're looking for the
And
word
yeah,
retired, right? We're retired from.
retired. I don't know. I also feel like washed up has-been's probably not good, given the best I've done is top 8 twice. So, yeah, I feel like I probably need a little bit more accolades before I can
Yes.
really call myself washed up. But I digress. Essentially, I want to still be active in whatever way I can, and trying to push forward this community focused series essentially
Mhm.
is one way that I'm trying to look into that. I know there's other things I'm doing right now that is in support of the team, but I think just as much, right? Every time we come together, I think it's great that we have our crew of 20 plus at this point, but just as much, I want it to be known that we are also trying to help do things for the community as well, so that I mean, my personal goal, like this is something I know I've told some people. My personal goal eventually is I want by the end of not necessarily this upcoming 2025 season, but by the end of the 2026 season, I want at least one person to have bought an MGLA jersey that isn't on the team because they thought it was worth it. Like that is where I see things. I want people, for whether you like us or you hate us because we're a bunch of goofy little guys and gals. Uh, I want this to become more of like a celebration of whatever you think is appropriate. So that's kind of where my vision is. I want it. I want people to get excited or at least pay attention when the different teams roll in.
Yeah, and it's a super admirable goal. I think about, locally at least, we don't have as big of a local scene on Long Island right now, but in with MGLA in Boston, like it's you guys usually have at least like 10 to 14 people like a weekly, right?
I'd say when we all show up, because some weeks I don't show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when we decide, hey, we're all going. Yeah, we have like 12 to 13, 14 people show up, and
Mhm.
that is one thing that is really exciting. Um, I know we're running right up towards the end, but one other thing I actually did want to tack on in terms of community and thinking about the local community is I also want to find ways to, uh, I guess, locally tackle the issue we have of finding amenable ways towards. We'll call it the MGLA pipeline, if you want to call it that. Because currently, it seems that just about everyone who plays in Massachusetts will eventually join the MGLA. I swear we are not paying people, but I think that at least for those people who are interested in more casual stuff, don't want to get into the competitive, I think that this upcoming stuff with Critical Role, these PvE encounters, I have some personal thoughts that I'm very excited to try. No idea if it's going to work out. Potentially, just have those casual nights, or maybe even a longer form campaign
Mhm.
where people who are, say, earlier in their UVS career, or just however they envision it, still have the capacity to play with some of those who are a bit more competitively focused. So that's another aspect I wanted to bring in that does tie a bit more back to community. And just as much, if they're excited and still want to play PvE and want to buy cards for their deck, well, that still helps out the marketplace as well.
Mhm.
So hopefully Sean earns a little bit of money from that.
Yes. Um, yeah, and yeah, it's just anything to sort of help build these communities, anywhere, right? Where UVS is an awesome game, and obviously you and me both have met a ton of awesome people thanks to it, and so just kind of continuing that, kind of like paying it forward, I guess would be the best way to put it, right?
Yes, I would be totally okay myself that if every other week I literally just showed up to play PvE games with people who were like, I want to try out this funny deck, and it would maybe never do well in a locals competitive format, but because we're doing PvE and we're getting to like still play together, it's still that experience of UVS of Universus, but being side by side rather than necessarily head to head.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, and I'm definitely looking forward to potentially some of those experiences as we get more about Critical Role. But as we're sort of wrapping up, is there anything else, last minute thoughts you wanted to add, or?
I would say, not necessarily like any additional thoughts. I really do just want to say how proud I am of all of the people on the MGLA at this point. I know it started locally with just some Massachusetts folk that were trying to figure out what are we going to do? How are we going to figure things out, essentially? And slowly we've started accruing people who realize that, like, no, they didn't join immediately. They just hang out with us, right? They bunch of y'all playing League all the time. And slowly over time, it's realizing, like, well, turns out we're not half bad Universus players either. Let's just band together. Like, there's no reason. Turns out this past Nats, we actually liberated the metagame, sort of. Maybe we'll have something else funny cooking for Worlds. Who knows? There might be something there. But yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah, everyone will just have to wait and see until the World stage, see if we've had something cooking.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is as long as you've got anything to throw in here, that'll be the we're wrapping up on this video. Make sure to subscribe and subscribe to the channel, like the YouTube video. We also have the official website for the team, where we post,
Yes.
there'll be articles on there about content about Universus. There's the player profiles. We're getting those up, right?
Yep. We're working on those. We already have yours.
Yes.
So
My very detailed one.
I will tell you, funny enough, you may lose some that detail war. I've been looking at it as part of editing. Some people have a lot to say.
Yeah. Mine might not, but that's okay. And then I guess final shout outs, at least, we talked a lot about Rochester, as you were vending for them. If there's any cards you're looking to buy, you could hopefully go check out their website, and hopefully they have it in stock. But if you don't have any other shout outs you want to throw in here, I guess it's time to say goodbye. I'm Constantine. This is David. And thanks for watching.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.